Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Drees with the Daily Memphian. We are joined by Shelby County Commissioner and Budget Committee Chairman Michael Whaley. This is On the Record. We record this Friday, April 28th, 2023. This past Wednesday, just by way of recap, Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris kicked off county government's budget season by unveiling the first budget proposal of his second term of office. A few highlights from that. The consolidated budget proposal is $1.6 billion. That's with all of the budgets from the elected countywide officials outside the administration included. The county property tax rate of $3.39 currently would drop a penny to $3.38 in the mayor's proposal. The county's $50 wheel tax would double to $100 a year, creating a revenue stream of nearly $34 million toward a real shift in priorities in county budget priorities, so to speak. The county's capital budget would go from $75 million to $150 million. And that has been the headline so far, as the capital projects list would now include $350 million over 5 years for a rebuilding of the Regional 1 Health Campus in the Memphis Medical District, $38.7 million as the second of two installments toward a new Cordova High School. There is another $77.5 million over several fiscal years for a new Fraser High School, with the mayor seeking $9.9 million in capital funding in the current fiscal year to get that project started and completed ahead of the July 1st beginning of the new fiscal year this budget proposal covers. So, Mr. Chairman, let's start with your initial reaction to the overall budget plan by Mayor Harris.
Yes, well, Bill, thanks again for having me on. I think one thing that's I think quite unique about this coming budget year is the emphasis on infrastructure investments and the capital improvement plan. That typically what we see is a lot of debate and work done around the operating budgets, but we have historically, as you mentioned, always seen a capital budget of around $75 million a year, and this proposal and going forward would essentially double that. So I think, investments in infrastructure certainly make a lot of sense to me, and look forward to, really debating more around, this new large investment, certainly Regional 1 and continued investments in our schools.
Mm-hmm. So a hike in the wheel tax that would double it must have 9 votes or a 2/3 majority on the commission to be enacted. At the outset, do you think the votes are there? Does this have your vote just 2 days after the mayor formally presented this? After dropping a lot of hints that there probably would be this wheel tax proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to speak for other commissioners, where they would land on it, but I do feel like there's a, general sense of, the importance of making, these critical infrastructure investments. The Regional 1 campus is such an important asset to our community, and one that we want to make sure that we do invest in, and it's something that has sort of been deferred, and at some point, you've got to make the tough decision to say, let's invest in it for the next generation. Because that's what happened many generations ago when it was first built. So I think there's definitely an understanding of the need to do it. But certainly, I also understand that many commissioners will have questions around the best way to do so. In addition, what is the role that other governments, particularly the state government and potentially the federal government, what role would they play in the long-term rebuild of that campus?
Right. Right. And let's talk about that for a second. So the county's capital funding for Regional One would be the first money in for what is a $700 million undertaking, with money expected from the state and federal governments as well as private and philanthropic dollars. What do you want to see on the state front in terms of a commitment before the commission approves the first money in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think obviously the state's going to have to be a major partner, and my understanding is that they are very much willing and wanting to do so. But I'd also say that I think this is also an opportunity for the county government to be a leader in kicking off this project. With our commitment, that'll in many ways help secure those additional funds that are needed to complete the entire project. The $350 million that is proposed from the county would go directly to the rebuild of the trauma center and the neonatal care center, two of the most important facilities on the campus. And so, that in of itself, I think, is a good enough reason for us to do it. But what it does is, by us, stepping out there and saying, we're going to lead on this, it further, I think, puts pressure and brings collaborative partners to the table to finish the project over the multiple years that it would take to do so.
Mm-hmm. And there has been a lot of discussion prior to this, and I expect it'll be part of the ongoing discussion, that the state involvement, it's hoped by the administration, would include the state essentially becoming a co-owner of Regional One with the county through the University of Tennessee Health Sciences Center, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So that is a pretty major change, which would seem to guarantee some ongoing level of state funding, because the county's ongoing level has been at around $30 million. Have I got the right dollar figure?
That's right. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
And that's been operating funds.
Right. Not capital.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let's talk a little bit about the schools piece on this. First of all, as your committee gears up to go through this budget proposal, it sounds like the commission is going to be asked to approve just short of $10 million to get the new Fraser High School project started in this fiscal year, the one that ends June 30th. Did I hear that correctly?
No, I believe that would be so the $9.9 million that would be allocated to the Fraser High School would be for the FY24 budget.
Okay.
And I think certainly there's a good chance that that'll begin by the end of next fiscal year, right? So that's not something that's going to happen right away. But
okay, so kind of in advance for the new fiscal year.
That's right.
Okay. All right. And in terms of Cordova, that seems to be fairly straight ahead, because you've already the county commission has already committed about half of the $77 million that's involved for the Cordova High School.
That's right. So I think you'll see probably about $36 million in the FY24 proposal, and then the remaining amount, another $36 million in the FY25 proposal that, of course, would have to be approved next year.
Mm-hmm. We're tossing around some big dollar figures here, but they are spread over several years, we should point out. So if it's equal portions over 5 years, the $350 million for Regional One comes out to $70 million per year in capital funding, which is still a lot. On the other hand, while the commission and the mayor lay out a 5-year capital plan for projects that are done over several years, in most cases, the out years 2 through 5, aren't necessarily set in stone. But then again, on the other hand, you might say, once you've started planning and design work in year one, it's more difficult to call an undertaking like this off, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, it is. And one of the things that we've, in anticipation of this, we've looked at more closely over the last year or so is, what our debt capacity is over the long term, and looking beyond just the coming fiscal year and figuring out where we do have additional capacity. And so we will see some additional capacity in fiscal year 27 and beyond, as some of the debt gets paid down and some of the projects roll off, that would allow for potentially less funds to be committed on the front end and more funds on the back end, specifically for Regional 1, because there is that additional capacity that we will likely see in a few years from now.
Mm-hmm. The commission had, there were several commissioners who had some initial reactions to this budget proposal on the day of the presentation. And some of that was the idea that maybe we shouldn't drop the property tax rate since it's a penny on the tax rate. Do you think that politically dropping the property tax rate a penny makes voting for the wheel tax more palatable? I guess I'm asking, do those two necessarily travel together in this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the conditions that was put on that go forward resolution that we passed unanimously to support Regional 1 included some sort of property tax relief, whether that be a reduction in the rate, which is what's being proposed, or an increase in the tax relief program, which is something we've done over the past few years. I do think that seems to be important to several commissioners, that we show that balance. So what it ends up looking like, I can't predict that, but I will say, some combination of a reduction in the property tax rate or an increase in the tax relief program, certainly could be helpful to Shelby County citizens, but it's hard to say exactly where that'll end up.
Mm-hmm. At the county's budget retreat several weeks ago, the commission also got a more in-depth look at something that the mayor referred to in this week's budget address, and that is what is called the sales ratio, something that comes up in the third and fourth years of a tax cycle when you're dealing with personal property, property taxes, and valuation on things like public utilities and things like that. That the taxes that come in on that are going to be, I think the mayor said, about 14% lower, which is a pretty significant impact here of, I think, over $25 million on your revenues for the new fiscal year.
Yeah, it's actually 24% lower.
Okay.
And so there's no impact to the sort of real estate valuations. It's, as you mentioned, the sort of personal or business property and the state assessed properties like infrastructure. The latest numbers that I've seen, put that reduction at about $17 million, which will have to be made up somewhere. But that's something that, as you mentioned, happens every 3 years as a way to sort of equal out with the fact that real estate appraisals happen every 4 years versus every year for personal and state assessed properties.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you are in your second term on the county commission. Talk about what this budget proposal represents in terms of shifting priorities and county government's role in some of these issues, namely education and healthcare, which are the two kind of twin towers of what's going on with this proposal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like this is at the core of what we are responsible for is schools and public health, and I think being able to really dial in on infrastructure that is needed for these areas is good to see. I mean, I think that's really what you would want. I think what people would want from their county government is to ensure that infrastructure investment is made, and so it is a bit of a shift because we typically don't spend too much time on the capital improvement plan budget, but this year will be different because by far that is the biggest change in the budget proposal is going to come out of that capital budget.
Sure, and the discussions will be different for sure. To just let people know who don't know how this works, you're the chairman of the budget committee, and that's where this really gets hashed out before it goes to the full commission. And while there are committee members appointed to the budget committee discussion usually sees all 13 commissioners there at some point or another between now and when you take the final vote on this, probably sometime in June. So logistically, is your committee's work here to go line by line through this, or is it about the changes within this proposal and discussing those?
Well, so the process over the next few weeks and months will be first to have a budget hearing next week where we'll hear in additional detail the full proposal and likely again focus on the large changes in investments, as it relates to specifically Regional 1. I think you'll see more discussion on that next week, and then the following two regularly scheduled committees will be set aside to be able to debate the entire proposal and potentially consider amendments that the commission may want to make, whether they be internal or external, partially driven probably by what we hear at the budget hearing. So that opportunity will happen throughout the month of May, and then with the plan of approving a budget in early June. Ideally, though, of course, we have until the end of June, but everything should track such that we have the opportunity to do an approval on the 5th of June.
Mm-hmm. And the final point, you are doing some participatory budgeting this time around, aren't you?
That's right. So we started this last year, and we're continuing it this year, and it's got a little more structure to it, and such that members of the public can go online to 901budget.com. They have an opportunity to learn more about the county budget. Just essentially learn more about what the county doesn't do, give a chance to give feedback on, what priorities matter most to them. And we get a chance to see that feedback and consider that as we make, final decisions.
And what's the dollar amount on the total budget that we're talking about here that's open to this?
Well, the community-centered budgeting process is actually open. We're asking about the entire budget. So there's really two components to it. One is an education piece, so that people can learn more about the county budget and what components go into it. Essentially what percentage goes to staff or schools versus public safety, and then it gives an opportunity for members of the public to potentially adjust that budget as they see fit. So they can, increase one area, which means they have to decrease in another area. And it helps us see, what sort of priorities are being recommended by just general members of the public.
So the budget proposal is in, as we said, somewhere in this complex discussion with a lot of kind of mind-blowing dollar figures in it. This is the budget for the new fiscal year that will start July 1st. We have been talking with Shelby County Commissioner Michael Whaley, who is chairman of the commission's budget committee. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.